Okay, good morning to you all. Today it is with great pleasure for me to introduce you to Jill Attewell. Jill heads the Research Centre for Technology Enhanced Learning in the UK. And a particular focus of this centre is researching the use of new and emerging technologies for learning, including mobile technologies, computer games, and interactive digital television. Jill also led the first large mobile learning research and development project funded by the European Union from 2001 until 2004. And this project was called MLearning, explored with partners, practitioners, and learners in the UK, Italy, and Sweden, the use of mobile technologies to engage young people with literacy and numeracy development needs. Jill is also Vice President of the International Association for Mobile Learning, IAMLearn. Currently, Jill also leads the mobile learning network MoLeNET, an initiative which has involved over 40,000 learners and their teachers in colleges and schools in mobile learning over 3 years, from 2008 to 2010. Today, Jill will speak about some lessons from this initiative, and her speech will give us an account of her experience and knowledge on mobilizing technology for learning. And Jill, when you wish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, it's like this.
Ah,
Okay.
I think that's better. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Technology, yes. Yes, I'd like to talk mostly about our experiences running something called the MoLeNET initiative, which has been going on in the UK for the last 3 years. That followed on from quite a number of years' work we've been involved in mobile learning. And although this current programme has been only in the UK, I think as we go through talking about it, people will see that there may be some transferable lessons for other countries as well. Okay, so what was MoLeNET all about? What is MoLeNET all about? Actually, MoLeNET was a deliberate attempt to move beyond research and development, to move beyond just small-scale pilots, and to start rolling out mobile learning in a fairly serious way in education and training. We had been involved in a lot of research and development. There'd been some very promising results from that, and in discussion with the organisation in the UK which funds all education and training after school except universities, we decided it was time to stop experimenting and try to actually roll out mobile learning across post-14 education. And it's very much about harnessing the technology that people have got in their pockets, which is increasingly, as everyone will be aware, is particularly in developing countries, very sophisticated technology. Excuse me. Just a few numbers. We've been very fortunate in funding. Funding comes from the Funding Council, responsible for this section of education training, and also from participating colleges and schools. And over the 3 years, as you can see, we've involved a lot of learners and a lot of teachers and a lot of institutions. When we talk about mobile learning in our project, we're very much talking about handheld pocket-sized technologies. I'm aware that in some cases mobile learning projects include laptop computers. We made a decision that we didn't want to look at laptop computers unless they were very, very small ones, because we were very much interested in technologies which can be in your pocket at the point where you're doing the learning. So just some examples of the sorts of technologies, not just mobile phones, not just mini laptops, all sorts of different technologies. The projects that have been involved in MoLeNET have used, including handheld games technologies, UMPCs, tablets, iPods, and a number of things which aren't in this picture. A lot of the projects used very small cameras, little cameras which you can put on your head to record vocational activity, special little pens which you can use, which will record what you're writing, and all sorts of scientific or agricultural handheld technologies, handheld GPS, handheld technologies for testing soil and weather, and all sorts of specialist things, as well as these more mainstream technologies. So it was all about improving teaching and learning, and improving the experience of learning for learners, and improving the outcomes from learning. And it was also all about training up teachers, training up researchers, getting more people involved in mobile learning, understanding about it, and passing that knowledge on to others. And very, very importantly, as we were going along, although we started off convinced that mobile learning was a good thing, a very big part of what we've done is to collect evidence of impact and effectiveness. We're also very much motivated by social and economic issues. Quite a lot of work which goes on in post-14 education in the UK is vocational work. And part of the focus was people who are work-based learners, and traditionally people would be at work, and perhaps they would have one day where they would come into college to carry out the more theoretical side of their learning. This, as time goes on, becomes quite difficult. It's quite difficult at the moment, where the UK, like a lot of other countries, are experiencing some economic difficulties. It's more difficult for work-based learners to get time away from work for learning. Staff training budgets within a lot of companies tend to be one of the first things which are cut when there are economic difficulties. Part of the process of learning, if you're a work-based learner, is an assessor visiting you and assessing how well you're learning in your workplace, and this can be a bit disruptive. So there are a lot of issues around the process of learning and working at the same time, which we felt that mobile technologies could help to address. Not least just fitting learning in around a busy life. If you're working, you also have your life outside of work, and you're also trying to learn at the same time, can be quite difficult. And mobile technologies can help deal with some of that. So the sort of benefits which we found from particularly focusing on vocational and work-based learnings was that if you had technology with you, it gave you better access to technology. In some workplaces, access to technology for learning is quite limited. Our research showed that work-based learners were producing coursework to a better standard. They were completing the theory side of their courses quicker. Where they had technologies such as smartphones, they were able to very easily and effectively gather evidence of what they were learning in a multimedia way. This was also more enjoyable for them. They felt better in touch with their tutors and better supported and more part of the learning environment as well as the work environment, where they had the technologies always on, which helped them to be in touch with their tutor and interacting with their tutor whilst away in the workplace. The last item on this slide, where people had difficulties when they were trying to introduce mobile learning to workplace, it was often because they hadn't sufficiently consulted the employer at the beginning. And some of the employers were thinking, oh, what's happening? You know, why is this person doing this? Is this a good idea in my workplace? Is this going to be disruptive? Is somebody with a phone, with a camera in, going to be recording things which are commercially confidential. So the negotiation and discussion with employers proved to be extremely important. The other area where we found mobile learning was very, very important was for young people and for particular kinds of young people. Currently, there's quite high unemployment amongst younger people. We have this expression in the UK, I don't know if this exists anywhere else, we talk about NEETs, young people who are not in education, employment or training. And there's a lot of concern about NEETs. These are some of the issues. You know, people have gone to school, they haven't done very well at school, they haven't been happy at school, they've been bored at school. The way in which school has delivered learning to them has not really suited them, and a lot of people drop out of school, and if they've gone to college, a lot of people drop out of college. Excuse me. What we found is that mobile technologies have been really, really helpful for these kind of learners who haven't got on very well with the just sitting in lines doing what you're told kind of learning, but where they can have the technology and they can use it to make the lessons more interesting. They can go outside of the classroom and learn in situ in all sorts of different places. This can make things much better for them. Also, very helpful in terms of where you have teachers who are not really very confident with the technology, but learners who have their own mobile phones and are very competent users. This can be very good for the learners' self-esteem, because they can be saying, oh, I'm showing the teacher how this works, and realising that they have some useful skills which they hadn't really thought of skills in the past, which is quite good for learners who have had not very high self-esteem. When we talk to a lot of colleges and particularly schools about allowing people to use mobile technologies in classrooms, there was some concerns from the teachers that this would lead to poor behaviour. Actually, the reports that we've had coming back from our researchers is quite the opposite. In many cases, behaviour has improved. And this seems not least because learners are not bored. Just a little short video clip talking about, or this is a tutor talking about her experiences with a group of young learners who have previously been quite difficult, and now they've been using in classes the Sony PSP handheld games machines to record activities and do some learning in quite a different way. Oh, go back.
Some issues of behaviour, obviously, in the group, and what we do with this is in their breaks they use them for the games. They've got games on them, so there's none of this confrontation that I was having before, where at one point I've actually had to get in between chairs being thrown. That just isn't happening, because they just sit and they will just play, and then at the end of their break or whatever, then you just say, right, games away, now we use them for work. So all the issues, I mean, it's just, it really has made such a difference to that constant having to be on top of the behaviour. And also, if you can see some of them getting stressed, then you can send them out with that, give them 10 minutes time out, but with something to do, rather than time out and then thinking, oh, well, I'm cross now because she sent me out and I've got nothing. You send them out with that, doing this, and they're calming down as you're doing it.
So how much of a difference does it make to your job then?
Well, I'm not being quite so worried about chairs being thrown at me for a start, really. But I mean, I think I like to be creative. I really enjoy them having a different way of working. So for me, it's been a really positive thing. And to see them think about, actually have to work through, like creating a costume out of what you've got on, you know, the bags on the floor. It's an amazing experience, because you watch them develop, change the way that they work from, oh, it's school. And if you talk to them, a couple of them say this is the only lesson that they come to because it's not boring. And they say, oh, we really play up at school, but we don't for you because we've got different things to do.
quite interesting. Yes, mobile games technologies for learning, because that was particularly what this group of learners was using. And this is something which has been very popular within MoLeNET. Both the Sony PSP games machines and the Nintendo DS games machines have been used by quite a lot of groups of learners. And not all, or actually less for the games than anything else, particularly with the PSP, of course. It can do all sorts of things apart from just play games. And particularly if you screw the little tiny camera onto the top, it becomes a very powerful device for learners generating learning content which can be used by other learners, and also for learners to record activities that they're carrying out if they're perhaps interviewing people, filming what they're doing for assessment. Really quite a powerful thing. Yeah, if we carry on to talk about how we've gone about measuring the impact and ensuring impact of what we're doing. What we've done within MoLeNET is we've had quite a complex mix of different research methods, and we've drawn from quite a varied number of different evidence sources. Very importantly, we've had a lot of practitioner-led action research. But we've also had research where we've had regular reports from our project managers from what they're doing. We've carried out surveys of teachers, we've carried out surveys of learners, we've carried out interviews with senior management at the colleges and schools involved. We've collected from all our projects the data about learner retention and learner achievement, which we've then analysed and compared with national data sets on learner retention and learner achievement. We've also had all of the projects producing a lot of case studies for us, so quite a variety of quantitative and qualitative research and data, which we've then kind of had to kind of bring all together and try and make some sense of. But we were very, very keen to try and gather quite a rich research picture. We didn't want to just put all this technology out there, say get on with it, and then perhaps just do a quick survey and that was it. Practitioner-led action research, we felt this was absolutely vital, particularly because an aim of the programme was culture change. We really wanted teachers to make use of the technology with their learners. We wanted to change the way that teaching and learning happens. And so very much we wanted to have people in each of the institutions involved saying right from the beginning of their project, what are we trying to achieve here? How will we know if we've achieved it? How will we measure what we're doing? We provided training for the practitioner researchers in action research, in research methods. We provided mentoring support to them. We helped them to develop their research plans, and we helped them to think about how they analysed the findings of the research. So a very important part of the effort was finding out how well has this worked, actually down there with the teachers and with the learners. Okay, if we go on to quickly say what have we found out. We've had very consistent messages over the 3 years from our work, which I think is extremely helpful. I think if we'd just done 1 year, people might have been able to say, well, you know, this is some particular different thing in that year. So very, very useful for us that we've been able to work across 3 years. We've had very consistent messages about improvements in attendance and leading on to improvements in learner retention, less people dropping out, and better results, better achievement by learners. And all the things that I've been talking about a bit before, you know, making things more interesting, more flexible, more relevant, particularly in the terms of vocational learning, trying to make the theory side more obviously relevant to the vocational skills that people are learning, better support of work-based learners. a lot of our projects found, particularly in the third year, that a lot of the mobile technology is very good for supporting learners with learning disabilities or learning difficulties. So some very interesting work. And I don't want to talk about that too much now because we're limited for time, but some very interesting things about that if people are interested. So we did this comparison of statistics of the national statistics for England for learner retention, and we compared it to the cohorts who took part in MoLeNET, and there were we had the data for about 5,000 of them in the first year and about 8,000 in the 2 subsequent years, and there seemed to be a difference in those 2 groups in terms of less dropout of learners. Similarly, there seemed to be a difference in terms of learner achievement. When we talk about this, there are an enormous number of qualifications that I should add. In this exercise, there were an enormous number of factors that we were not able to control for. Of course, any kind of initiative which is encouraging people to focus more closely on how they're teaching, how they're learning, tends to have some improvements. There's quite a number of things that one has to say. But we found these were quite promising figures given the fact that really quite large numbers of learners were involved. We found that technology is very, very useful, particularly for data collection. A lot of learning, particularly learning post-school, is about learning something and then collecting evidence to show that you have learnt it, to prove that you have certain competencies for assessment purposes. And a lot of the mobile technologies were used in this context of gathering evidence of learning and feeding that into assessment processes, and also using mobile technologies for getting feedback from assessors and tutors about work people had submitted and how they need to improve and how they move on to the next stage of assessment. And all that could be done very much more quickly than in the past via the mobile device, rather than waiting until the next time you happen to be in the college to talk to the tutor. Probably just go through this a little bit more quickly. We've talked a little bit about some of the things about focus and attention and fun, collaboration and communication. Clearly, the thing that people always used to say about e-learning was it was always, oh, well, this helps people to learn anytime, anywhere. And of course, with desktop computers, that's actually not quite true. It's anywhere you've got a desk with a big computer on. Mobile technologies make that kind of claim start to be actually true, but also very useful for just-in-time learning, just what I want, quick reference to something on the internet, quick reference to something on an app, also supporting both individual learning and collaborative learning. And in some of the opening remarks, there was a lot of discussion about content, and one of the things that we found to be very, very important was the creation of content, not just by teachers and not just by outside companies, but by the learners themselves. So not just consuming content other people had produced, but producing content, constructing learning and knowledge collaboratively with other learners, and then using that for your own benefit and for the benefit of other learners. Just a little bit of feedback from some learners. These are actually learners who were learning English as a second language and using mobile phones. Just a little bit of feedback from them about what they felt about the process and what they used them for.
My name is Yasir Al-Hawashim and my course is ESOL Entry 3 level.
And then my name is Ali Asfandiari. As he said, I'm doing ESOL as well.
Okay. And what piece of equipment did you have to use as part of the project?
We had to use a HTC mobile phone in a project to
do some work for college?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Then prepare your English with it?
Yes.
And what sort of things did you do with it?
We took some pictures from different places. Also, we took some videos.
The restaurants.
Yeah, restaurants. We researched internet. Yeah.
Okay. And did you use any applications to help you with your English?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
I've downloaded Babylon translation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Twitter.
Twitter to communicate
with everyone in our class. Everyone got like account, and we can communicate for free with each other.
Teachers.
And has it been easy to use?
Yeah, it's very easy.
Very easy and very useful.
At the beginning it was like, you need to learn to use it, but then it would be easy.
Did you help each other?
Yes,
yes.
Yeah. Helping, for example.
Like.
Yeah. Exactly.
And has it been useful to you?
It was
of course.
really useful. As I said, you could download whatever you want from internet. For example, translation, or music download program, or whatever. It was really useful with really good speed on internet.
Yeah, for example, I wanted to know some words, like in English. I didn't know. I just went to the internet, researched for the words. Straight away, I got them.
So where have you used the phone?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
I use it everywhere, for example.
At home, in the bus, in college, when I walk to the bus, stage stop.
Because it was really easy to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, just write something down and then everyone can see it.
So very interesting that they're talking about learning everywhere, anytime, not just when they're in the class, not feeling as though they're an isolated learner when they're stuck at home. Lot of appreciation of the ability to be able to communicate with all the other learners, quickly check something if you need something. They also talk about writing things down, so taking notes on the device. Obviously very happy with the experience that they've had. A little bit stuck. Just force it to go to the next one. When we were feeding back a lot of this information to our advisory board a little while ago, a question which arose was, but does it really change the way teachers teach in the classroom, or is this just something for remote learners, for outside of the classroom, for field trips, for learning at work, all these sorts of things? And I wonder if you're going to be able to see this. Yeah. We carried out a survey of the teachers where we asked them a lot of questions about whether they were doing more or less of things, or about the same. So it was things... it was things like, are the learners working more together? Are they... Is there more requirement for support for the learners? Are they working more independent? Are there more learner-led activities or more teacher-led activities? We even asked things like, are you increasingly sorting out the furniture, putting the furniture in groups instead of in rows, and these sorts of things. And quite interesting to see the results coming back. The blue line, I don't know if you can see that it's blue actually. Here. This is when people said that we're doing more of things. And the teachers were going back and saying that the differences that it made, the sorts of things which are highlighted in that the lines are further out on the graph, were things like learners are learning more together. They're learning more outside of the classroom as well as inside of the classroom. The learners are working more independently. There are more learner-led activities and less teacher-led activities. There are more visual learning opportunities. And there's much more learner creation of content and resources. So these sorts of things start to give us a better idea of actually what's changing within the classroom context, enabled by the learners having the technologies. and the things that people are doing less of, say less just straight didactic teacher telling you the information. And less learners just learning by themselves. So more of a kind of more commonly a more socially constructivist type approach rather than just sitting and being told. And we had some very positive messages coming back about this from some of the senior management in some of the institutions, and this was just an example of one of the people we spoke to, who felt that actually what the learners were doing was much more sophisticated, much more complex, much more about learning than just being given information. I want to leave some time for some questions. We tried to think what made things successful. And in our case, we had this little model, and we felt that all of these items helped our programme and our projects to be successful. The one at the top in the middle, capital investment, clearly that's been enormously helpful to us. We were given a great deal of funding for equipment, and that's not something that everybody has the luxury of. However, the box on the side to that which says shared cost funding, this was very, very important. Colleges and schools, they were given money to buy equipment, but they had to put some of their own money into the projects as well. And this was really, really important for engaging the senior management and feeling that they had a stake in this and they had to make this work. It wasn't just somebody was giving them some money and it was just, oh, thanks. Which is what that ties into the local champions. Very, very important. There's a senior management person who wants all this to happen, but also someone a bit lower down the scale who's the champion with the teachers, who's working with the teachers and saying, come on, let's try this, we can do things with this, showing people what they can do and keeping everybody kind of enthusiastic at the beginning when some of the teachers was thinking, oh dear, another new thing I've got to get my head around. It says here supported project. We were very, very keen not just to give schools and colleges money and walk away, because there have been, I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, there have been some very bad experiences in the past where a lot of money has been given to institutions for some technological thing, video conferencing, virtual learning environments, these sorts of things. But they haven't been given the money for the staff development and all the things that you need, as well as just the money for the equipment. And we've tended to find that we ended up with what people call kit in cupboard syndrome. You're given a lot of money to buy the kit, you buy it, you put it in the cupboard, that's it, nothing changes. So actually having a project saying, in order to get this money, you have to propose a project. This is a project, this is our aims, this is what we're trying to do, this is who we're going to involve, this is how we'll know when we've achieved it. Very important. I've talked about practitioner-led action research. We felt this was absolutely vital to make sure it all works and find out if it's working. And both staff development and mentoring. So staff development, not just training courses for staff that they might go on and then a few days later forget what they've learnt, but actually each project had a mentor that they could turn to for all sorts of advice and help throughout their project. And also the online systems which allow people to share. So when people have created something, found something interesting, found something useful, they could share that with other teachers. All these things taken together, we found meant for successful projects. Okay, so if people want to know more, the MoLeNET website, we've produced quite a lot of big reports that people can download free of charge in PDF format, or if you'd like to have printed copies, you can get in touch with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does have nobody any question for Jill?
Hi, thank you very Thank you very much for sharing the details on the project. I was wondering, is it continued funding then? Is it going ahead now? And secondly, are you consulting with other countries or other departments of education? You kept making reference, I don't know if other countries have had this problem. Last week I was at a conference about Spain's problem with these NEETs. and also with the laptop computers which have been distributed to the children here in Catalonia that are 12 and 13. And they really could use a lot of help. So I was wondering, is your organization also doing any sort of consulting, or have you been publishing the works in that sense?
In terms of our funding for MoLeNET, that's now come to an end at the end of the third year. We were rather hoping that we might get funding for some further years, but we've recently, obviously, economic times are difficult. In the UK, we've had a change of government, and a lot of the message we're getting from the government is that we can't expect to get big sums of money for things anymore. So, yeah, we've come to the end of that funding. In terms of working with other countries, we're very, very happy to do that. We do offer consultancy services to both educational establishments and companies who want to be involved in mobile learning, and that can be in the UK or outside. So we're very happy to do that. And one of the reasons for coming to events like this is to kind of share information about the things that we've done and learn from other people about their experiences. As I said, we have produced a number of quite big reports on, I think I left a couple on my chair. So each year we've produced a big impact report, and that one's the one for the second year. And we've also produced reports with a particular focus. So we've just produced this one, which is about work-based and vocational mobile learning. And this one's very much a collection of case studies. And there are reports. There's an impact report from the first year, and also there's another report which is about the use of games technologies for teaching and learning, which again is a case studies one. At the stage we're at now for our third year, we've collected in all our data from all our different research sources and methods, and we're in the process of writing up that. So come probably December, we'll be producing the impact report for the third year. And we'll probably produce another report which has got a focus on sustainability and cost effectiveness, because clearly that's something people are very interested in. And in the last year, we've asked particularly that people out in our projects should be looking into that, and a lot of feedback's come back about the ways in which mobile learning can contribute to cost effectiveness and how you can make mobile learning more cost effective. And one of the big messages from that is very much enable people to use their own technology, because certainly in the UK, a lot of people have got a lot of this kit. So the message coming back is, invest in a very, very good wireless infrastructure, and let people use their own kit, and very, useful, very good use of resources.
Thank you, Jill. Clearly a great project with great results. What do you think will happen in a case where schools, in this case, kind of reached out to you and said, here's a project we want to do, and there were local champions who could run with it? Let's say the UK government, as in South Africa, is interested in mobile learning, but as soon as something gets kind of rolled out from the top down without those local champions, what do you think? What are some of your thoughts on how that'll play out? Because certainly, we get a lot of resistance from teachers who don't want mobile technologies in the classroom, and for various reasons they don't get it like perhaps we do, and so they only see the bad side, not the good side. Yeah.
I think that there's two things that you need to do. One is teacher development. It's really, really important to provide as much information and training and support and things as you can for the teachers, because clearly for some people this is really quite a big step. We found there are a few teachers who didn't actually have a mobile phone themselves and didn't really like technology very much, and so when we were saying you could be using this in your teaching, they were thinking, oh my god. So yeah, teacher training really, really, really important, teacher staff development, but I think also the project approach, because we felt that was vital to roll out, not just, as I say, not just giving people money, not just saying to people, you will do this, but saying to people, let's have a project, let's have a collaborative project where you are part of the project, you're part of deciding what you're doing, saying to the teachers, how do you think you could use this? How can we help you to use it? And let's have a project to have a go. Giving teachers kind of permission and freedom and resources to experiment is really so important. Because if you just tell people to do it, it tends to generate resentment. But if you say to people, here's a little bit of money, and sometimes it's amazing what you can do with really small amount of money, just enough money so you can have an afternoon off from teaching perhaps for a few weeks to experiment and to try things and to find out if it works. It's really, really helpful.
Hi. Well, sorry I was late, so maybe you already answered this question that I'm going to ask. This is Natalia Riquelme, and I work for Nokia. We definitely find very interesting the mobile learning subject. And I wanted to know what is your relationship with the technology companies and the platforms, and how do you create the application, and how do you approach, like, for example, Nokia to be a partner in your project?
Interesting. Unfortunately, and this may be partly our fault. We found it very, very hard to engage with the big technology companies. We hoped that we might when we did our first big mobile learning research and development project, and we hoped that we might a bit when we started MoLeNET. And we didn't find it very easy. Every now and again we'd find that companies would be quite interested in what we were doing, but it didn't translate to a close ongoing relationship. And we found this both with companies who are suppliers of the kind of handset technologies, and also with the people who are suppliers of the networks. We had at one time some colleagues at, for instance, Orange and T-Mobile and companies like that in the UK who were very interested in what we're doing, but we never got to the stage where they said, and we'd like to be involved. And similarly, earlier on, we had some conversations with some of the mobile phone companies who said, oh, this is quite interesting, but we can't see how it's going to lead us to large increased sales, for instance. I think maybe some of that attitude is changing now. I think maybe over the last few years that there's been a bit more of a changing attitude. And I think a lot of the big companies are becoming a bit more interested in education, a bit more interested in engaging in education, not just in order to very, very crudely sell things to people. But I'd be interested to know more about Nokia and what you're doing.
Hi, I'm Ismael Peña from WOC. Let's imagine we are in a parallel world. We've built this very same project, but only with desktops. So we have desktops at the workspace, we have desktops in the classroom, we have desktops at home. What is different between this parallel world project and yours? So what is the marginal impact of the M instead of the E in the learning?
There are certainly some similarities. I mean, you can achieve some good results with technology, particularly if you combine both the technology with the staff development, with the funding, with the enthusiasm, with the kind of learner engagement. But I think what mobile technologies bring is the kind of flexibility and immediacy. Because if you are just using desktop technologies, you are rather rooted in a place. And it limits the extent to which you can do something in a very quick way to respond to the situation in which you find yourself. If we look on the kind of work-based learning side of things and vocational learning side of things, one of the difficulties that a lot of people have had in the past is that technology doesn't fit very well with some workplaces that people are in. If you're working on a building site or in a hairdressing salon or in a fast food restaurant, it might not be very easy or convenient to have a desktop computer to hand. it's just not very easy. But a lot of the new technologies, they're very small. You've got them in the pocket. At the moment, you need them for a bit of just-in-time learning, or to support an activity, or to record what you're doing. You just quickly take it out of your pocket and take a picture. It's that immediacy and that in situ learning, I think, is really, really important.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It has been really interesting. I liked very much the point on motivation, personal motivation of teachers and students, learners. I think this is a key point. You have to use technology because of some goals, and this is pretty interesting. I've got one question. Have you got any evidence about the subjects that are better fitted to this kind of learning? You mentioned the video was about English as a second language. Have you got evidences regarding other subjects as teaching maths or natural sciences or social sciences? And if so, are there more difficulties with some of the subjects, or everything will work as well as you mentioned in any case because of this motivation and this engagement? Thank you.
We had a really diverse group of learners who took part in the project. So, and they were studying all sorts of subjects and using all sorts of technologies. And there seemed to be some things that mobile technology perhaps lends itself to a bit more than others, and there seem to be some technologies which fit a bit better with some subjects, but it's a little bit complicated. It's interesting you're talking about maths. Quite a lot of our projects were focusing on maths at quite a low level, at, improving people's numeracy who didn't have very good numeracy. And something which was quite successful in a number of cases was people were using the little Nintendo DS machines, and there are little maths learning games which are just produced by Nintendo. So that content is there. But teachers were using that as part of a much bigger course about numeracy. So in order to add a bit of kind of interest and variety, and to encourage learners to persevere with something which they previously found kind of difficult and rather dull. And there were some very positive reports about people who hadn't engaged very well when they were just using the kind of traditional ways of trying to improve their numeracy. But once they were given a kind of gaming way of doing it, particularly for the younger ones, they became quite hooked into this and made much better progress because it was more interesting. So there's that kind of thing. Quite a lot of use of technologies for the scientific subjects, which involve a lot of collecting data whilst you're doing something. So collecting data in a lab or collecting data out on field trips. A lot of the teachers and learners found that the technologies were much more convenient than how they had done this in the past, where you'd go out on a field trip somewhere where it was muddy and raining, and you'd have a clipboard with paper on, which always got kind of messed up and lost, and then somehow you had to get the information, then go back to school or college and transcribe the information. With the mobile technology with you, you could just collect data onto the mobile device where you were, and it can go straight back to the computer. So when you go back to the classroom, it's there, and you can then access it and do further work with it. And so those sorts of things were very helpful. I've said a lot of things about a lot of the vocational subjects where people having to learn skills, and sometimes some things are a little bit difficult, practical skills. But if you had video podcasts on an iPhone or an iTouch or just a cheap MP3 player, MP4 player, the learner could kind of look at that video many times and get confident with what it was they're trying to do it themselves, film themselves, look at it, thinking, have I got this right, and eventually produce a video which would be used for assessing them. So those are a few examples, but certainly people were trying to use the technologies across quite a range of subjects, quite a lot of arts and media subjects. People were using technologies, for instance, in classes where people were doing drama and dance. Again, very nice to have a little very small convenient device you can quickly take out and just record what you're doing and then review it and have a look and think, you know, how can we improve that, have a discussion about it, reflect, and sport as well. A lot of FE colleges in the UK do a lot of sports science and sports coaching type of courses. So again, very, very useful to have the handheld technology out in a field, filming people running, playing football or whatever, and then going back and analysing and discussing and looking at ways to improve and lessons to learn and all those sorts of things. So I suppose what I'm saying is a very wide variety of subjects, including both kind of academic and vocational.
Hi. In the presentation you talked a lot about colleges. I'm curious if you've worked with any corporations, mainly focusing on the types of corporations that employ these NEETs, so fast food restaurants, retailers, supermarkets, if they've approached you or you've approached them in, I suppose in my day it was the YTS or the NVQ, and you would work towards a qualification. I'm just wondering if that's something you've looked at or they've looked at with you.
Yeah, it would have. What we would have done is it's kind of worked a little bit arm's length from us because we supported the projects, and that the projects were all led by further education colleges, but they could involve schools as well, and they could also involve work-based learning providers as well. We certainly had groups of learners who were out in a variety of different workplaces, and the tutors were working quite closely with the people in the companies that employed them, and it was quite a variety. So we had, interestingly, a lot of people working in hairdressing and beauty salons. For some reason, we had a lot of those. But we also had workers who had literacy and language learning things that they had to do, who worked in a big laundry. We had people who worked in garages doing motor vehicle maintenance. Quite a number of different types of work-based learners. Yes, people working in restaurants. Just trying to think of other examples. Quite a lot, quite a lot. But the most of the contact was between the project managers and the practitioner researchers and the teachers of the college and the people who were involved at the company end. But then when they did their actual research and produced all reports, there are quite a lot of case studies which talk about the different types of employers. We had a bit of a disappointment earlier on that one of the projects in our first year, the college already had quite a number of apprentices working at Rolls-Royce, and they thought this would be a fantastic opportunity. And one of the things that they wanted to do is they wanted their learners to have head cams, little cameras on their heads, so that when they were working on things, it would record what they were doing, and that would be useful for assessment and for learning. But Rolls-Royce became very concerned about possible industrial espionage and banned mobile devices with cameras, so it kind of limited that aspect of the project a little bit.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, thank you for this interesting talk, Ji. Okay.